Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Alicia with Coaching with Dr. Alicia, and I have my good friend here, Crystal Holmes. Crystal, introduce yourself to everyone.
Good morning or good day, everybody. I'm Crystal Holmes. I think I'm going to talk about divorce with Dr. Alicia because I am an attorney. So I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, I reached out to you, Crystal. I'm so happy you came on here to talk to me because you did two posts on Instagram and on Facebook. And down below, you can follow her on Facebook and Instagram. But there's her links there. But she did a topic as a defense, what are you? You are a divorce attorney. And so you were speaking from the perspective of a divorce attorney, why men get divorced and why women get divorced. And
Yes.
you did a part one and a part two, and it set the internet on fire. I saw it and I was like, whoa, we need to dig into it a little more because I think after reading some of the comments, although most of the comments were supportive, some of the comments to me, it just seemed like they were kind of coming at you a little bit about what you had noticed in your perspective. So your first video was on why women get divorced. So tell us, what were some of the reasons that you mentioned why women get divorced?
Yeah, and like I had mentioned to you before, Dr. Alicia, I did that. Let me say this. I don't think I've ever posted about divorce before because it's very hurtful, it's traumatizing, and I never wanted any of my clients to think that I was talking about their particular situation, right? But I felt like I needed to address this because someone very close to me is watching a lot of his friends get divorced. And so there are a lot of questions about why are the wives filing, what's going on. So I said, let me just do a little quick post. And so some of the things that I have heard from women over the years is just a general unhappiness. It's not one thing that broke the camel's back. It's a bunch of things that have occurred over time during the marriage. And honestly, some of these things started before the marriage. And they could be very minor. You know, some of the comments were, oh, you would leave a marriage over something minor. It's not just the one minor thing. It's thing after thing after thing that went unaddressed. And then, like, here's an example. This might be silly, but you marry your spouse, you move in together, and you learn that she likes to wash her clothes only one day a week, where you want your clothes washed every day.
Yeah.
And you think she's nasty because she only wants to wash clothes once a week and she's letting her clothes pile up. And she thinks you're being wasteful because you want to run up the water bill by washing clothes every day. Now, that might be silly, but that little silly disagreement, it went unchecked. Y'all didn't resolve it. And then there was another disagreement, and then another, and another irritation. And then the resentment sits in. And then you guys had a baby. We know what effect children can have on relationships. And then more and more resentment just keeps building up. And then the wife just got to a point where she was done.
Yeah, let me tell you, I also, as a couples therapist, I see that a lot. It's very surprising how much time couples spend arguing over things like washing the dishes. I have seen a full on fight on how to wash the dishes, whether it should be cold water or hot water. Laundry is another big issue, but the big issue is the lack of communication and the lack of listening to each other when you communicate to understand how and why this is important. And I have to really take it very seriously when I talk to couples, like, tell me the story about why you feel the need to wash clothes once a week. Tell me the story
Yeah.
about that. And you'll be so surprised how deep seated it's come across. Say, you know what, when I grew up, it's a story behind it. When I grew up, my mom, we didn't have a washer and dryer in the house. My mom would take me down to the laundromat every Saturday, and it was cold, and we weren't able to afford whatever. Like when you get into the story of just that once a week and not being wasteful, you start hearing things in their background that's important, and they have a dream for their family that we're not going to be wasteful because I never want to be put back into that situation. So with a lot of couples, when we get down to the surface, well, it's the surface level things, but when I have couples share with each other, tell me, how is it that you came to this conclusion, and they really are in a position where they feel vulnerable enough to really divulge into why and how this is so important to them. You get this beautiful story of things that they've gone through, and you can see the couples, really good couples who truly love each other, they start to soften. They start to say,
Right.
you know what, I think I understand now why that once a week is important. I understand why being wasteful was such a problem for you growing up. Like, you start to hear how these couples aren't able to connect current things that are happening with them with things that happened in the past. And
Exactly.
once we try to like explore this, hopefully they will never get to a divorce attorney like you. But so many couples don't. You know, they don't nip things in the bud before it starts to build up, and all that resentment and anger that accumulates between couples, it's ridiculous. It's a thin line between love and hate, and you really realize that, I'm certain, on your end.
Oh yeah. I often sit and I'm like, how is it that this couple was madly and passionately in love at one time, and now they literally like hate each other? I don't understand, like, how did that happen? How did it happen? And of course there are always situations where there's abuse, either physical or psychological. So putting that kind of thing aside, um, it just amazes me. And I think you're right, Dr. Alicia. There's a lack of overall communication. And sometimes couples or a person in the relationship will hear what they want to hear, and they
Mm-hmm.
interpret it in their own way,
Yes.
but they're not really understanding what their spouse's interpretation of that is.
Yeah, and so I agree. It's almost like, okay, hold on, wait, you're adding to the conversation that this person never really said. It's like, no, wait, wait, wait. Don't think about what you're thinking. Just, and sometimes I'll have couples just write things down. Like, write down what you heard him say. And once they write it down, I'm like, okay, now read that back and make sure you got it all correctly. Little things like that, because you hear through the filter of what
Mhm.
you've been through in your past. And that's why I think marriage is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Because there's this thinking that you have to heal yourself first in order to be in a relationship or get married. I think it happens simultaneously. I think you pick the perfect person to get married to help you deal with your stuff. Because I
Yeah.
think your partner is going to mirror back to you all of the things that you need to deal with. And
Yeah.
the best couples are able to say, okay, what is this person saying? This is a blind spot. Like, your partner sees your blind spots. And I do find this a lot in men, that they aren't able to air their grievances in a way where it can be heard. So it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting because you spoke about men feel unsupported and disrespected. And when I get down to it and I say, okay, when you had an issue, how did you talk about this issue with your wife? And chances are I'll just be like, oh, that's how you'd addressed it. Like, it's done in a way where, first of all, it makes their partner not feel appreciated, which was beautiful when you talked about the not feeling appreciated. A lot of women feel. So there's a way in which you can address concerns and air your grievances with your partner, where it doesn't include attacking that person or putting them down or anything. Just talk about what you want and how you felt. And
Right.
so a lot of times it breaks down that way, and the unfortunately the husband walks away feeling like they don't have the respect that they feel like they need.
Right. And it's a lot of it's tit for tat,
Yes.
that start long before the divorce. The woman is feeling overwhelmed and
Yes.
underappreciated, and she feels, for whatever reason, I'm not saying she's right or wrong, or she's justified, but she's feeling like she's not getting the support that she needs from her husband. And so she says, forget him. I'm going to make this big decision in the marriage, and I'm not seeking his advice. And so she goes out and she buys herself a new
Yes.
$80,000 car without running that by her husband. And so then he feels disrespected. Like, how could she do this? And like I said, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's just a buildup. When the woman doesn't feel like she has the support of her man,
Yeah.
you know, then she starts to disrespect him. And it's wrong, but at the same time, men got to have to listen to the wife and what her needs are, and see if you can help meet those needs.
Yeah, and I think like I remember like addressing a lot of women. Now I'm talking to women here. They they also need to be taught how to ask for help because we take on so much and things are done. We're equipped to do things efficiently our way. And so when we ask our husbands for help, they do it their way. And you have to like sometimes I tell women wives a lot like just don't look. Just turn away and just be grateful and appreciative that he is deciding to take on some of this burden. And, we have this mindset where we have to take everything on. And if not, I'm not a good wife. If I don't
Yeah.
do everything, then I'm not a good mother. But good
Yeah.
mothers have self care, and good mothers delegate, and good mothers work as a team. Good wives work as a team. Everybody needs to share the burden.
Yeah. And I mean, you hit, because I do that in my relationship. I get frustrated and I'm like, doesn't he see all this has to be done?
Yes.
You know, but I won't say anything. But then I have to stop myself and say, well, no, he doesn't see it. Everybody doesn't see it in the same way that I do, So I need to tell him what it is I need help with.
Yeah, and it just would be so much easier if my husband can just read my mind. Why do I have to say anything? I shouldn't have to ask. You should read my mind and know. And it puts your spouse in an unfortunate situation because if you're not able to talk about what bothers you in the way that's constructive, then you walk around with these needs, these unmet needs in your
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and then there's the anger and the resentment, all because you did not have the conversation that you needed to have.
Exactly.
It's really something. And I like the disrespect part because I get that a lot from husbands. And some of it, now I'm coming down on husbands. Some of it for a lot of men, they think, okay, I just want my wife to do what I tell her to do. And that's respectful. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you can't just say, here's how it's going to be. It can't just be top down. This is how it's going to be. And that's the end of the story. Like, that doesn't work. It's 2020. What is it? 2023 now?
Well,
That's
yeah.
not going to work. It didn't even work back then.
Well, they use the word, I've heard it more than once, submit. And I mean, I don't want to get all into the biblical stuff here, but um, I, I find a lot of men use that word, but they're not necessarily using it in the biblical sense.
Yeah, you do bring up submission, and I have some really interesting thoughts about submission. I've been floating it around in my head because I have a really interesting interpretation of the Bible in general. I'm of the opinion, and I know that there's a bunch of the different opinions, but I'm of the opinion that I don't think submission really means actual people submitting to each other. I think the Bible is a very allegorical stories in there about our own, submission. Like, and I'm definitely into the conscious and subconscious mind. And I really do think that internally you have to submit to your own higher power. And it has absolutely nothing to do with real life men and women in our life. So I do think couples need to be respectful of each other. They need to figure out how to compromise, because just like the story on laundry, doing your laundry every other day versus once a week, you need to be able to sit down, share those stories, and have a compromise. Come up with a common ground, a win-win situation where you feel supported, your spouse feels supported, and you can sit down and come up with an agreement. But the whole thing about submission, I think it just gets diluted, and it takes away from the very necessary process of respecting each other. So
Right.
submission just means that wives submit to your husbands. You really think that's what that means in the Bible? That as a wife, there's a marriage that takes place inside of you. And that's my interpretation. That marriage
Yeah.
inside of you is where you are and what you can be, and that should be married.
Yeah.
And, that's the marriage. It's not talking about actual people.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's my
You're right.
interpretation.
But yeah, it's a lot of and like I said, I'm not saying the men are right. I'm not saying the men are wrong,
Hmm.
or the women are right or the women are wrong, but this is how they are feeling.
Yes.
And so if, I don't like divorce.
Mm-mm.
Contrary to popular belief, yes, I'm a divorce attorney, but I'm going to encourage you to get therapy, go to couples counseling, whatever you can need to do to save your marriage. Okay. And so I just start to see so many people that haven't really tried um, to try to preserve their marriage. And if you just try just a little hard, just put in the effort, you might be able to save the marriage. But the flip side of that is sometimes things have gone on for so long that feelings are so hurt and the resentment is so high that there's no turning back.
Yeah, there's no turning back sometimes, and I think, like, if you find yourself heading down that road, I really do think that you have to make a conscious effort not to have a negative thought about your spouse when they're not around. Like, really, and it works this way. If you put your spouse in a positive light mentally, when you think about your spouse, don't allow yourself to think about all the negative stuff. Like, really minimize some of the mistakes that they make and some of the things that they've done wrong, and maximize all of the things that they've done right. It really starts with you. It starts with
Yes.
you. Think about how you can build just an atmosphere of appreciation and gratitude. Any little thing that they do, it doesn't even matter. If you ask them to take out the trash and they take out the trash, make it a big deal. Oh my goodness, you just took the trash out. Thank you so much. I don't even care how phony it sounds. I don't even care how mechanical it sounds. Any little thing that your partner does to help you, to help the household, to help the children, make it a big deal. And I'm telling you, like, that sort of atmosphere of gratitude and appreciation builds up in it. And just that alone can help to you yourself can help to turn around a very negative marriage into something really wonderful, just by showing basic appreciation every single day. Even if you have to set your phone to remind yourself, send a little text, hey, I was thinking about you, thank you so much for this. And the thing is that there are couples who get it, who really are just wonderful at resolving conflict, excellent at listening, do a fantastic job. Believe it or not, they do a fantastic job showing appreciation and active care and attention and love for their partner. And they do not let any negative thoughts or anything else come in the middle of their relationship. And those marriages are beautiful.
Right. And there's so much negativity. I mean, there's social media,
Oh,
there's people, family, friends in your ear, telling you what you should or shouldn't do. So there's so much negativity that can affect a relationship.
yeah. And another piece of advice, now that you mentioned that up, mention that. Do not talk to your friends about your marriage. Do not. Like, really, I think that when you speak about your marriage and you speak about your spouse, it should really only be in a place of love. And when you have to deal with issues, you should speak to your partner, first of all, directly. And if you're not able to get down to the bottom of it, you should speak to a professional. Because you
Yes.
don't want, it's just not, first of all, would you go to, if you had a toothache, would you go to a mechanic?
Hmm.
Would you go to a mechanic and say, hey, can you fix my tooth? No. So why would you go to someone that's not trained? And what the, don't necessarily go to your mama and your daddy and your cousin and your aunt and all those people. You don't go to those people. They're not professionally trained. If you want to
No,
complain,
and
mm-hmm,
yeah, and what happens is when you do that, 9 times out of 10, you're not leaving your spouse, but you've already shared this negative information
yeah,
with your mother, with your sister, with your best friend about your spouse. So now they don't like your spouse no more.
yeah. And
And
meanwhile,
so,
you made up with your.
right, you've made up, but now your mama can't stand it. And so now your mom is gonna keep digging at you about why are you staying? Why are you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it just, I agree with that 100%, Doc.
Yeah, you gotta have somebody that's gonna be really objective.
Hmm.
So that's one piece of advice I would give. But so anyway, Crystal, give us one more thing that you noticed as a divorce attorney. What advice would you give to someone are you still a divorce attorney or former divorce attorney?
Doc, I had to take a break. Um, uh, when the pandemic hit, it was, I don't know what happened, but the divorces went up and the nastiness went up too. Um, and so I had probably some of the worst divorce cases that I've been involved in my career during the pandemic. So I needed a break. So in 2021, I stopped accepting divorce cases. I recently started taking some, very, very recently again, but I'm not, they have to be uncontested
Okay.
or not high conflict, right? Because I do believe you can work things out in a divorce and go your way peacefully. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be nasty.
Yeah.
So, yes, so I do accept some.
Okay. So what advice would you give? What advice would you? I got two pieces of advice I'd like for you to give. One, what advice would you give to couples based on what you've seen that will help to prevent coming to ever seeing you? That's my first piece of advice that I'd like for you to give. The second one is if you are going through a divorce, what would you suggest people do so that they don't drive their divorce attorney crazy?
Okay. All right. So to avoid getting divorced, just thinking about the years that I've been in this game and divorces I've seen, and I'm just keeping it real, okay? There are some people I see that they should have never got married.
Mm,
The signs were there, you knew it, but you married the person anyway.
okay.
Don't I said I'm going to write a book one day for women. I'm a woman, so men don't get mad, so I speak to women because I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let your desire to have this fairy tale cloud, I should say, your judgment,
Mm-hmm.
and let you pick a partner or choose a partner that's really not for you. I
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of women, they think that the clock is ticking, they're running out of time. I got to get married, I want to have children. And they're making poor decisions regarding the partners that they are selecting. So to avoid divorce, make better choices of and that goes for men and women. Um, if you've selected the perfect partner for you, like we said, doctor, you got to listen, you got to do the
Mm-hmm.
work. I don't think anybody would say that marriage is easy. Even the ones that have happy marriages, it's you get caught up in a routine. I look at my partner and I, and you know, we get up. I'm up at 3, he's up at 5, and we're rushing trying to get out the house. And he goes his way and I go my way. And then I come home and he comes home sometimes after that, and sometimes I'm in the bed, and we're like two ships passing in the night. And it's easy to get caught up in those routines and not take care of your spouse, not figure out what they need, not tell them what you need. So I think we have to do better in this busy society of checking in with one another, taking moments, time, scheduled, however you need to do it, to be with your spouse, talk to your spouse, see what their needs are, tell them what you need. So it's about listening, about making the time.
Yeah, so there were two things you said just now that I thought was absolutely brilliant. Number one, don't be in denial about about your partner. Like, it is so much, even if you've already planned the wedding, trust me, it is cheaper to lose your deposit than it is to pay for a divorce. And you're stopping yourself from committing yourself legally to somebody that you know that that's not the right person for you. So don't
Right.
be in denial. Face what's happening right now. And of course, if you're in denial and you have some reservation, go and seek therapy, because the best marriages right now are couples who are married that I saw right when they were thinking about getting married, and we ironed out everything so that when they got married, all of they understood what the expectations were. So many people get married and they don't have explicit conversations about how their marriage is going to operate. They spend so much time talking about the wedding, but what about your marriage? What is it that you're
Yes.
in denial about? Let's iron all of this stuff out. And chances are, like, a man is not going to ask a woman to marry them if they don't really deep down love them in a way, So having those hard conversations up front is painful. And I like
Yeah.
pain. Pain is great because you learn so much from it. But you don't have to live in denial and then spend the rest of your life suffering in this marriage. So I love
Right.
that. The second thing you said was connecting with your spouse throughout the day. That is so important. Even a small text message and say, okay, if you wake up at 3 and I'm waking up at 5, first of all, I don't know no couple that that don't do that. It's still dark out. But anyway, whatever time you wake up, if it's different times, deliberately, consciously figure out a way. Okay, you were up at 3. I'm up at 5. Let's go and have breakfast together. Before we start our day, or whatever you do, you need to have these, what John Gottman talks about, rituals of connection. I love John Gottman, by the way. And that's so important so that you can stay in tune with each other, and you're not living parallel lives, which I see quite a bit. So anyway, so those were two great points that you brought up. So the last thing was, if people have, once you have decided, listen, I'm not going to be in denial anymore. I'm just not going to be with this person. This person is not giving me what I need. There's so much resentment built up. There's a point of no return. It's just, I'm done. What advice would you give to people at that stage?
Um, it, I believe in uncontested divorces. Now, of course, sometimes that just can't work. But I believe in being open and honest about you wanting to end the marriage.
Okay.
I think you owe it to your spouse, whether it's man or woman, to say, "Hey, this is where I am." I think filing for divorce and the spouse has no idea that it's coming is very hurtful. And that, talking about attorney's fees, that will run up your attorney's fees, because the spouse that was caught off guard is now angry.
Yeah.
And a lot of the reasons that divorces are so expensive is because the parties are hurt. It's tit for tat. It was tit for tat in the marriage. Now it's tit for tat in the divorce. I'm not letting you have the dog. You can't have the cat. So you're arguing over silly stuff, and attorneys, most of them, bill by the
They're
hour.
licking their lips and rubbing their hands.
Right.
Woo, I got a live one
So,
now. I'm gonna make some good money.
right. Y'all want to keep arguing? You want to email me every day, 5 times a day? I'm billing you for every single email, every single call, every single thing. And then you get that first invoice from your attorney and you're like, "Whoa, how did I how did $7,000?" Yes. Yes. So, I would say try to be open and honest as you can with your spouse about that you want to be divorced.
Yeah.
See if you all can come to a meeting of the minds on what that looks like. See if you can resolve certain things. What are we going to do with the house? Are we going to sell it? Are you okay with me keeping my car and you keep your car? What are we going to do with this retirement? Hey, we got this credit card debt. How are we going to address this? The kids,
Yeah.
Now, like, everybody can't have these conversations, right? But I think there should be an attempt. And if you just cannot resolve it, then obviously you absolutely can just, it will be contested. But majority of divorces end up settling at some point anyway. They don't all go to trial. But I just say be open and receptive to working it out. Because especially if you have children, if you're arguing, the kids see this. They know this.
Wow.
They know it.
That's so interesting. It makes me wonder, do you really want a divorce, or are you trying to get back at your partner? Sometimes they don't really want it. I mean, people who really want a divorce would be like, okay, fine, take half the house. Let's just get this done. People who are really motivated to make sure that things are done fairly and not trying to get over and not trying to push each other's buttons. Those are people who I think, by what you're saying, are really serious about, let's just get together, let's communicate, let's try to figure out how we can get down to the bottom of it, because you want an inheritance to go to your children, not your lawyer's children. It's like, right. That's where it's ended up. Like, you're taking money out of your kids. And I went through a divorce, and I quickly figured out, like, oh, well, yeah, he can have it because he's going to end up giving it to the kids anyway. And whatever I take, I'm going to end up passing it along to the kids. It's going to the same people. Like, it doesn't even matter. It's just like I'm holding on to it for X amount of years, and then it's end up going to be, especially when you have mutual children together, it's like, they're my heirs. They're going to get it anyway. So what difference does it make? In the grand scheme of things, you do need to see the big picture. And if you're real serious about it, you're just like, let's get down to it. Let's be able to compromise. But at the same time, if you were able to compromise, you would have had a good marriage to begin with. So it's a conundrum, isn't it?
It is. It is.
And so you just have to have these skills. These skills you just need: conflict resolution skills, communication skills, compromise skills, ability to be flexible, see the big picture.
Yeah. And let go of the resentment.
Yeah. Yeah. Resentment, to me, it's like it's almost like a virus that goes through your body, and it can just take over. It's like a germ that just can fester, and if you don't take antibiotics, it will kill you. It really will do physical harm to you. And that's how I see resentment and anger.
Yes.
There is just and so many hurt feelings. You got to think about the words you use when you talk to your spouse, and how hurtful some of those things can be, and don't minimize their feelings. And I think men and women do this to each other way too often and think it's okay. That's not okay. Yeah. It is not okay. Well, thank you, Crystal, so much for talking to us. Thank you for being able to put yourself out there and do a really great video on divorce. And I appreciate this conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a conversation we need to have. Because I feel for relationships, marriages, I think we're going down the wrong path. And if we want to save our families, I think we're stronger together, than we are apart. And I think marriages are changing.
Mm-hmm.
As women become more independent,
Mm-hmm.
and making more money and working, things are changing. So we've got to have real conversations
Mm-hmm.
about how marriage looks and how we can have successful, lasting marriages.
Yeah, I think absolutely agree with you. I read a book recently on the history of marriage and what marriage looked like back when we lived on farms, is totally different from how it looks post industrialism,
Hmm.
and now we're at a point where women are making more money than men, and so now marriages have to look and operate differently now. There's a different set
Yes.
of expectations. There's a different set of rules, and I think we need to get with the times. I don't think we need to go back to
Right.
anything.
And that's
We
the
need
thing.
to
It's the
get with
expectations.
yeah.
I think there's a different set of expectations,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody needs to be on the same page of what this new set of expectations are. And I think that's where we are failing.
We are failing, and I have seen marriages that have been able to adjust to these expectations, and it's the most beautiful thing you ever want to see. Like,
Hmm.
just know that when you start to just accept the reality of how things are 2023 and just accept it and really come at it with that understanding, in the end you marriages are happier and healthier now than they've ever been once once those expectations are discussed and talked about. The reality needs to just set in. You'd be so surprised on the other end of that how wonderful this marriage can
Yes.
actually be, to help you grow and self-actualize, and all of these things can happen with a really great marriage if two people can get on board.
Yep.
Thank you, Crystal. And
Thank you.
in the show notes, you'll see how to get a hold of Crystal if you're interested. And if you need a divorce attorney, she may be in. Are you in? You're probably in the state of Georgia or something.
I am in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those of you in the state of Georgia, if you need a marriage attorney, of course, if you need a marriage therapist, you can contact me at Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Okay. Bye bye, everybody.